I'm honestly really proud of myself now because I built this business. I had this tenacity. I did all of it through struggling with severe mental health issues. And now that I, have the diagnosis and I can look back and I'm just like, wow, like pat on the back, like I did a good job.
We love the San Gabriel Valley. There are some amazing people and businesses here, and we think they deserve the spotlight. Welcome to the SGV Master Key Podcast. We'll have on the people that make the SGV great. We'll find out what makes them tick, their ups and downs, their history, and we're going to have fun doing it. This is the SGV Master Key Podcast. And now your hosts, Scott Warmoth and Russell Mano.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, we go deep into the stories behind the people that make up this great community. If you're a returning listener, thank you. And we welcome you to join us on this next episode where we take a look into another one of our fellow SGVers. Before then, just a reminder, we've partnered with San Gabriel Valley Now, your source for city news, announcements, events, special savings, and everything SGV. Check them out on Instagram, sgv.now, and read their new SGV Now magazine on their website, sgvnow.com. Well, Scott, we actually didn't prepare for an intro to our guests like we usually do, but I think I've had conversation with you about dogs, and I think you said you really wished you had a dog, right?
Oh, I love dogs. Yeah, I wish I did. I wish I do. I think back, to the dogs of my childhood, and I love dogs. I'm mostly like a particular breed kind of person, which happens to be, golden retrievers or labs,
Is that because they're like just really kind and gentle?
Yes. I just think they are like the most comforting, wonderful, I hate to call them creatures, I mean, I just love them. I really do.
Yeah. I've had dogs most of my life. I don't have one now. I have a cat, but I've had a basset hound, a mix, like a mutt. And then after that, two German shepherds. And I remember when they passed, one of them, Nico, my dad called me. He was getting old, and my dad said, called me and says, "Oh, we had to put Nico down today over the phone." And I was like, "Okay." And then the same day later, his wife at the time called me, and she's like, "Nico's dead," and I just started crying.
Oh,
it was so terrible. I mean, it was awful. But
we had our last dog that we had when I was growing up was a black lab, and she would go with me, when I would do my paper route.
Oh,
and yeah, she would. I mean, not every day, but she would trail me, and she just loved to go out and do the paper route.
Sure.
And I mean, I cried every time a pet, died.
Sure.
And I mean, even now when, pets that I know of, with family members or friends, I get very emotional. If I've been close to them.
Sure. They become a part of the family.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting that you said, I think you said black Labrador, right?
Yeah, our pet.
So our guest today, I've seen her around the gym, but I follow her on social media, and I watched her and her business grow over the years, and especially with her friend and companion, who was also a black lab. Her name is Alyssa Rosenthal. She's the owner of Leash L.A, which does both training and walking, but I think I'm leaning more toward the training. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah. So I don't mean to bring up a bad memory, but I know you had a black lab, right?
Oh, it's great memory. It's never bad. We all have our life cycle. Of course, it's sad. But yes, he was black lab and black and tan coonhound. And he was my partner in crime. We did literally everything together. Like, he barely stayed at home. So, and yeah, he helped me grow the business too, because he was such a good moderator. He was not overly energetic. He was not like blasé. He was just a good medium for all the dogs, and any new dogs that came into the pack, I would introduce them to him first because he was just so level. So he, helped grow the business and let me know where it was comfortable and what dogs fit and what dogs didn't.
So, just before, during lunch, I was telling Tori, it seems like such a fun occupation, right? To be around dogs often and do that. But tell us a little bit about, the origins of your business.
So I moved to Los Angeles to be a makeup artist. I was sure that's what I wanted to do. And then I started doing it and I was like, oh, I don't love this. So then I was just looking for a job and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So then I started working for this dog walking company. I just applied off of a whim. I've always loved dogs, grew up with dogs. They're just amazing. And so I started working for this company and it was like a light clicked on. Just to learn and communicate with another species was so powerful, just learning another language, that I knew immediately that I wanted to branch out and make my own business and, make my career out of speaking with dogs and their humans.
That's interesting. You refer to speaking with them. So you have to, I guess, like corral, manage so many different dogs at once, right? Like You're not walking one at a time.
No, we primarily do pack walks. So we don't do a lot of individual unless it's like a special need or occasion. But yeah, we do pack walks. Usually I'll take anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8 within a pack walk.
7 or 8 dogs at once?
Yes.
You're managing them yourself?
Yes, it's just me. Or if my staff, they'll have their own set. So we each have our own set of dogs and we have the route we pick up. And it sounds kind of like a lot. It sounds a little like, oh my gosh, but it's actually it's easier when they're in a pack. Like when there's more dogs, it kind of becomes a little easier because everyone just falls in line better. When it's like 1 or 2, they can get more distracted and like they have that independence of like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this. But when you're working in a pack and you have that energy and you're on the migration, it's so different. The energy is different and everyone just kind of falls in line. And sure, there's moments like squirrels, skateboards, there's always something, but I don't allow the dogs to be in front of me, and I think that's a big...
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I want to be in front. I'm the one that's supposed to look out for them. They're not supposed to do that for me. And when they do that, when we have our dogs walking in front of us, it creates a little more anxiety within the dog because they're kind of like, oh, like I need to be the first one to scope out the first sights ahead of us.
How do you stop them from running in front of you? Because would they naturally tend to want to go to the front?
Yes, a lot of them do. Some of them don't, but a lot of them do want to go toward the front. And it's training. It's about energy. It's about communication. I like to think of dog training and working with dogs as a language. We're listening, we're learning, we're getting on the level of the dog instead of, kind of letting them run the show. We're working together. And it takes a certain energy. Like you can't just go out and be like, I'm going to do this. There's definitely a certain energy, like a power and a calmness that you need to have to be able to control that many dogs. They want calm leaders. They want stability. So when we're calm, they can be more calm. And when we set boundaries, then they can follow boundaries. And, it takes a lot of practice. It takes, learning yourself, learning the dogs, and noticing how to recognize body energy. Like if I see the dog, perk up and get tense or their ears go back or something, I know that they're triggered onto something. They're like a squirrel or something like that. So those cues and being able to listen to those cues as soon as they start to happen is what you need to have in order to prevent them from going off. So if I can see, this dog is getting worked up, I can, give a little correction, which is just a little tug on the leash to get their focus back on me. And sometimes it's bigger and the correction needs to be bigger, but it's mostly about a silent communication is how
Are you usually working with the same group?
Yes. Yeah.
So you get to know them really well.
Yes. And I actually have a couple of new puppies that are coming in. You know, with the pandemic, everyone got dogs. So I've been doing a lot more training. And a lot of those training clients have shifted over to the pack walks. So yes, there's a core group that, you know, I've been working with for 6-7 years. And then there's the newbies. And the newbies, it's hard to like get them to understand the mode of the pack. So especially their puppies. So puppies tend to be, you know, a little less focused. They don't have the attention span that an older dog does. But the older dogs are really good about, you know, being an example to the younger dogs and kind of keeping them in check along with me.
Are you usually with them all day?
For pack walking, no. We'll do a round. I will go and pick up the dogs, or my staff will go and pick up the dogs, and then we do an hour on the ground. So pick up plus the hike or the walk. You know, we'll be out with them for like 3 to 4 hours, depending. But always.
Oh, it's a 3 to 4 hour walk.
Not walk. It's a 1 hour walk, but just with pickups because you're, you know, driving here to pick up and here to pick up and then dropping them off. So it usually takes like an hour to pick up, an hour to drop off, and an hour to walk. So
what is the story as far as the owners? Are they just not able to go out and walk with the dog?
That was my question too. Like, what are you?
Yeah.
Who are the clients?
It varies really. Some people they work, so they're not home, which definitely shifted during the pandemic. And some people do work from home, but they need to focus. And some people have injuries. I have a lot of clients actually that have just had babies, and that is a big client base is people that have just had children, because it's a lot and they're like overwhelmed and they want their dog to still get the attention that they need, and the exercise that they need.
Wow. Do you ever turn dogs away?
Since I'm doing pack walks primarily, when I started, I would do individual walks and I wouldn't turn dogs away unless they were aggressive to a point where it wasn't healthy for me or the dog to be out in a public situation. So now there's an intro test for the dogs. You know, I'll take them out once by myself to just get the energy, see how we communicate, and if I feel that it's a good fit to be integrated into the pack, I'll do it at a small level. Like I'll take them with 2 or 3 other dogs and just see. So it's about integration, and yes, there are some dogs that just aren't fit for that. And some people have dogs that are reactive, and I say reactive. A lot of people think their dogs are aggressive, but really they're just reactive. Aggression is, you know, they're really out to harm. Reactivity is usually anxiety and fear that are just bubbling up and have to express themselves, and it usually expresses themselves in a reactive, high energy way.
It's fascinating. You know, we get this like free education where we get so many different walks of life, and you know, I'm really curious about, you know, all of our guests that come in. But I also want to give you a chance to talk about you know, your history, your background, because that's also what this show is about. So can you go back? When did you first come to the San Gabriel Valley?
I moved to the San Gabriel Valley, Los Angeles in 2010.
Oh, 2010. And
Yeah.
where were you before then?
I went to school in Southern Oregon University. So I was there.
SOC. It used to be called SOC.
Really?
Yeah, Southern Oregon College. Yeah, in Ashland, right?
Yeah, in Ashland. Yeah.
Yeah, I have family that lives there and went there.
Magical place.
Yeah, Ashland.
Yeah.
Shakespeare Festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
Been to many of a show on the Shakespeare Festival stages.
Oh yeah, I have a good friend who worked those stages.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Oregon, or?
I didn't. I grew up in Northern California, and it's funny because a lot of people are like, "Oh, you grew up in the Bay," and that to me is Central California because there's still a lot of California after the Bay. So I grew up in Trinity County, which is almost to the border of Oregon. It's probably like a 3-hour drive, maybe. So I grew up way in the mountains, Trinity Forest, Trinity County National Forest, and there's kind of next to Shasta, Mount Shasta. So that's where I came from. And that, I just played outside all day. That's what me and my brothers did. It was like nature was our babysitter. My mom would just be like, okay, like go and put a watch on one of us and say, okay, come back at 2 for lunch or come back at 5 for dinner. So we would just leave and go play in the mountains and go hike. Like we ran into a bear once, lots of wildlife. And it was so cool because I don't think a lot of people get to experience that kind of communication with nature.
That's a very different upbringing than here.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And it's funny because growing up, I was like, I don't want to live in this small town. I'm like ready to go out. I want to live in a city. And now I'm like, that was such a gift of a place to grow up. And I love living in the city. I have a tattoo of it on my arm. It's really changed me as a person and let me learn who I am as a person in a great way. But I still have that lust for the trees and the woods. And
is that still home?
No, I don't have any family that lives there, but I have gone to visit, and Humboldt is a big space that is beautiful for me. I do go up to Humboldt quite a bit, just to frolic in the trees, and the ocean's there. Like you can be on a hike and you're in redwoods and then you turn a corner and then there's the ocean. So it's forest meets ocean meets magic. It's incredible.
So I mentioned earlier in the show that I would follow you on social media and see, one, your love of dogs and your friend Bo, and then also this other part of you where you're appreciating like just the beauty of simple things, the pictures that you would take of nature and things that you come across. Now I can see where you probably got that from, right? Yeah. This upbringing of going out into the woods and living out there. So you're originally from Northern California.
Yes.
And you came down to LA and you love it here and you started Leash L.A. What else happened when you came to LA for you?
They say if you can make it in LA, you can live anywhere. And when I first got here, it was brutal. I was like, I'm not going to make it here, that first year or two. And then once you kind of get your stride and you learn the energy of the city and you know how to make it work for you, everything kind of opens up. And so that is what kind of kept me here. And then also living near the San Gabriel Valley. And I think that's what's kept me here. If I had moved to Hollywood or West Hollywood or something like that, that is just not my energy. Over here, it's more familial. It's smaller. It's got that smaller town feel, even though it's still quite metropolis. So I definitely think that this area is a reason why I'm still in LA and I'm thriving.
Sure. Yeah, the San Gabriel Valley is definitely a special place, and I recall many guests, including myself, maybe had to leave it for temporarily to appreciate what it was or what it is, and come back and say, there's something really special here, and this is home. I remember the conversation I had with you before this show, and you were mentioning some of the struggles that you had encountered, and that I think the way you described it was that you're very open on social media about the things that you struggle with. And I was hoping that you could share with our listeners the things that you're going through. And, and what I had shared with you is that often like people can derive, I think, like hope or get some courage by hearing someone else share their story. And so would you be willing to share that part of your life with our listeners?
Absolutely. I have struggled with mental health my whole life. Been on this antidepressant, this one, and always kind of trying to figure out what this inner darkness was. And I just kind of thought it was a part of me, I called it my personal hexis, which is a reference to Fern Gully. I don't know if anyone's seen it. I
have, but I don't. What did you say it was?
So the villain in the movie is named Hexis. And it's like this oozy tar-like blob that gets trapped in a tree, but then people are deforesting the forest, and they come and they cut down this tree, and then Hexis gets out and starts to just take over. But it's like this gooey, gross black blob, and that's kind of how I felt was on my brain and in my heart. Like, it just always felt like Hexes was ready to come and take over. So I was always fighting that back, which was so hard. It's just, mental health is such a hard battle. And then, so not too long ago, I was diagnosed bipolar, finally, which, you know, is a big diagnosis. It's kind of that thing of like, oh, this is forever. But also I know what it is now. I am on medication that helps me thrive more than I ever have. And I'm honestly really proud of myself now, because I built this business. I had this tenacity. I did all of it through struggling with severe mental health issues. And now that I, you know, have the diagnosis and I can look back, and I'm just like, wow, like, pat on the back, like, I did a good job. And I feel really fortunate because I have family and friends. I have a community that was really able to hold me up when I wasn't able to do it myself. And I think that is so important when people are struggling with mental health.
What do you experience as bipolar?
So, you know, they say there's bipolar 1, bipolar 2. Really, you know, my psychiatrist kind of spoke of it more as a spectrum. Like, everyone experiences bipolar or any mental health different. So I spend most of my bipolar time in a deep depression before medication. Like, sometimes literally unable to get out of bed or feed myself. There would be times when I had to ask a friend to take Bo, my dog, because I just couldn't take care of him. Like, I could barely do it for myself. And then on the other side, my manic episodes are more severe agitation. Like, I just get so mad, and I can't control it. You know, I can control it where I'm not hurting people or myself, but it's just, I kind of have to lock myself away because I have this fire in me that is not a good fire. It's not a warm fire. It's, you know, a structure fire, forest fire kind of thing. So I vacillate between the deep depression. I spend most of my time there. And then these high agitation moments. And sometimes, you know, it's not sleeping or not being able to sleep. A big one is I won't eat when I'm in that more manic stage, which is not great for your body, because also when I'm depressed, I'll eat more. So it's kind of just this.
Do you feel you're always in one of those two modes?
I did before I found out that I was bipolar. So
you wouldn't experience moments of happiness?
Yes, but it's like if you're underwater and you can't fully breathe because you're so deep down, and you're like trying to get to the top of the surface so you can breathe. It always was just like teetering below that surface and right above, if I felt more level and even keel, which, you know, it wasn't always that deep depression or that agitation, but a lot of times it was that middle ground where I wasn't sure if I was going to be pulled back down or go back up. So before being diagnosed and going on to medications that are pinpointed for bipolar disorder, I spent there. And now I told my psychiatrist, I was like, you know, it's like my brain has been this musty old storage room that has gross boxes and cobwebs and mold, and it's just dingy. And then after being medicated in the right way, it was like someone came in, moved all the boxes around, cleaned up the cobwebs, and switched on the light. And I didn't know that I could feel like this. I didn't know that other people probably spend more time in this position of, I don't like to use the word normal, because what is normal, but I felt normal.
Wow.
Growing up, is this something that is always with you? Are you born with this? Do we call it a condition, or how do you describe it?
Disorder is what they do call it. So that's kind of what I call it. So there tend to be two ways that a person is or becomes bipolar, and one is it's genetic. and the other one is severe trauma in childhood. And unfortunately, mine is the latter. I don't have a history of bipolar in my family, but I did have a very traumatic childhood. So, there's studies and everything that are now coming out that we can, study the brain in a different way that are showing how trauma can physically rewire our brains, our DNA. And so it makes sense. Like when you're formulating as a person, you're just kind of growing, and to have something come in there and interrupt those synapses and rewire them it makes sense.
What kind of events would trigger that? I'm not asking you if you don't want to describe yours, but what can cause that or trigger or
the highs
create
and lows?
it? Yeah, create this disorder.
What
kind of traumatic event? In childhood?
I don't know that I want to go.
You don't have
there.
to.
It was a lot of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, and that's, I feel like, where I'm comfortable going to.
So you mentioned that you were on medication before learning about this specific one. Did that not help, or what was that like?
So it would be kind of where I'd go on first of all, going on medication, you typically have to phase up. So you start at a low dose and you get to the I forget what they call it, the functional dose or something like that, where it's a maintenance dose, I think. And then if you're going off of them, it's the same thing. You have to slowly wean off of them. And if you don't, it's very dangerous. Like your body is used to having this, assistance, and then it's very dangerous to just suddenly go off of them. So I was kind of going up on one and down on another, just trying to figure things out with my psychiatrist and doing it in the correct way and the healthy way. But it was the kind of thing where it helped for a little bit. Like I would get that boost, but there was always that nagging feeling of I could go under at any moment. So I'd get some energy is, I think, the biggest thing, because that's what I struggle with most is energy. So I'd get a little boost of energy, and then after a month or 2 or 3, it's like I get back in that hole, and I'm like, am I not doing it wrong? Or am I doing it wrong? So that tends to be how the other antidepressants would be for me.
Wow.
Is it possible to treat it? You're doing it medically. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to go back to the traumatic event and work through it?
Yes, I believe. There's all sorts of different therapies that are being developed. I do traditional psychotherapy and therapy. And I don't know, and I don't think science knows yet, if there's actually a way to go and rewire those neural pathways. But maybe. I just read an article on something that says we can change our DNA and how it's passed on to our children by being healthy and doing healthy things for our body and our minds. So I think the science, especially with mental health disorders, it's so new. It's just now okay to say, oh, I take medications, I'm depressed. Like for a long time, it's very taboo. I feel like it's just this new book that we're just opening, and we don't have all the answers. And I'm not a scientist. But one thing that they can look at the brain and see that in people struggling with bipolar, that the gray matter is significantly reduced. So it's an actual change of the brain. And there are things you can do to, help boost gray matter, reading, puzzling, being healthy, things like that. But you're starting from a bottom position and trying to work your way up, instead of just starting at this level base of like, oh, this is a normal brain.
Yeah. To what extent did your support network, family, friends, people who knew what you were going through, did they know like just the depth of what you were feeling and experiencing? Were you able to share fully with them?
Yes. Particularly with my friends. I moved to L.A. with my college buddies. So they've been my friends for like 15 years because we met before we even moved. So they're family. 100%. They've been with me through crazy party days, ups, downs, boyfriends. Like, they've seen every side of me. So that makes it easier for me to communicate with them. And they're just so gracious and so giving. And, it takes up a lot of space to be there for someone. And they just always have been. And I'm very fortunate to have that.
Did you lose people in your life because of, what you were going through?
No, I don't think so.
That's great.
Because, that's the other thing is I would share it with my close friends, but I didn't feel like I needed to share it with everybody. I tend to be kind of, I don't want to say closed off, but very reserved, and it takes a lot for me to let people in, which links back to childhood trauma, I'm sure. So I don't think I give a lot of people that I don't fully trust the opportunity to be lost. And the friends and family that I have always been supportive, have always been there. Yes, it's been hard to, help me sometimes or not know how, or they're going through their stuff too. So one thing we've kind of started asking each other is, are you in a place where I can vent this to you, or I can talk to you about this, instead of just blowing it up all on them, just asking like, hey, are you in this space to help me? Which is, I think, been really beneficial for our friendships, because sometimes you're just not. And I am that person too for my friends. It's not just all them helping me. I am able to help my friends as well.
Wow. That's really powerful. I like that. With my wife, I've learned to know myself more, and as a person who absorbs a lot and would often immediately go to seeking a solution for someone, I now learn to say, are you asking me for help, or are you just wanting me to listen?
Yeah.
Because often I find what they really want is just someone to listen.
Just a vent. Yeah, definitely.
But automatically, who I am and what I automatically would go to is, I need to solve their problem.
Yeah.
And I learned that, one, I don't need to, and two, they're not always asking.
Right. And 3, you probably couldn't if they wanted you to, Sure, you can help with some things, but we can't just solve all the problems. Otherwise, we'd be living in world peace.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that was like a, very codependent behavior of mine to believe that I needed to solve other people's problems. Alyssa, we ask each guest on the show to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
So it's kind of an interesting one, I think. It is Bo's skull.
Oh, wow.
Who we've been speaking about.
Yeah. Wow, that's so awesome.
This is his skull. I knew from the moment I got him that I wanted his bones, which this isn't actually together. It can be, but...
So to get it that clean, and you need to do something to that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I took it to a taxidermist. I don't know if I should say their name.
Sure.
It was Bischoff's Taxidermy. They were absolutely incredible. So I knew that I wanted it. And it's funny because we didn't actually have it lined up, because Bo, he was 12 and a half when he died, and to the day before he died, he acted like a 3-year-old dog, just always had energy. So in a way, we did know it was coming because he had cancer and some kidney issues, but also it was a sudden thing as well. So we hadn't lined it up yet. So it was like that day, I got on the phone or emailed. I think I might have emailed and asked if they could preserve his bones. So essentially, yeah, I asked because you can have it articulated, which is this skull is kind of is articulated. The teeth are intact, like everything's intact, and they would do that for the rest of the bones too, if you wanted. But I didn't get the rest of the body articulated. I just have all of the freeform bones.
So you knew of Bo. You've mentioned Bo. Bo, again, what kind of dog was Bo?
He was black and tan, coonhound, and black lab.
Coonhound is, I guess I don't know coonhound, but...
It's a hound that was bred for hunting raccoons.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's a hound dog for sure. He
Okay.
had a scent. His nose was amazing. We did nose work, and we did a competition once, and he got third place on his first time.
wow.
So he had an impeccable nose. He could smell.
And did you get Bo when Bo was a puppy, or
I
at
got
what age?
Bo around 3, and it's kind of interesting. It ties back to my business. He was a client's dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So and it's funny, the first time I met him, I was working for the other dog walking company and I was training. So I was going out with another, a woman that was kind of showing me the ropes and showing me the dogs that I would be taking over. And we went in, met him, I think took him for his walk and dropped him off. And as we're going back to the car, I was like, this sounds weird, and I promise I'm not going to steal him, but I think that's supposed to might be my dog. Like, from the moment, that day of meeting him. And she's like, oh my gosh, like, that would be so cool, because his previous owners were elderly, and he, like I said, just full of energy all the time. And he had actually pulled one of them down, and she had to have knee surgery because it was raining. She busted her knee, and that's kind of when they were like, hey, we can't give him what he needs. He's too much for us. And they knew I had a good bond with him. And they're like, do you want to adopt him? And like, before they finished the sentence, I was like, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I watched this friendship over online, and I could see when his face was turning gray. And I saw a couple instances where he had to go to the vet, and and now he's here. I know only from some videos, like, it's not an easy thing to get a bone to look this way. Sometimes they use bugs, I think.
Yeah, dermestid beetles. It took a little over a year to get him back.
Whoa.
Yeah, so there's all these processes. I don't know the ins and the outs, but essentially I think they use dermestid beetles, which come in and just eat all of the tissue. So then we get, like, maybe some muscle or sinew that's still left. And then they put them in these vats to degrease them, because bones you can kind of still feel it. Like, if you hold him for long enough, there's a little bit of a film, and then they bleach them, I think, or do a whitening, because usually the bone would be really yellow.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it took a year. So it's a slow process. It was not a cheap process, but it was fully worth it.
Yeah, and taxidermy, I personally would not taxidermy my pet, but that is also quite an expensive process. Like, if you wanted to preserve your pet like that.
Yeah, it was pricey, but in the long run, totally worth it.
And so the teeth are original. I mean,
These are his teeth. I mean, do you want to hold him?
You recognize them. You recognize the teeth.
And it's interesting because I can see Bo in that. And I don't know if it's because I knew him or if the bone, like, I really see the bone structure. It's probably a combination of both. But
yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, you would remember the teeth.
Yeah, those are his teeth. I know them the best because there's a little, like, a diastema, which is like a space in the teeth in the front. And he had that. So, and I have his toenails. I have his, paws, and
that is not what I expected to be underneath that.
a little bit of a surprise.
It definitely was. Yeah. Well, I understand you have a new friend now. And you're doing something different with your business, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
At Wormuth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Alyssa. Alyssa, before the break, we were talking about your new friend.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us about him?
His name is Ernest, Ernie for short. And kind of a cool story there too. He was my father's dog. And my father maybe a year after Bo passed away, he also passed away from cancer. And I never even met Ernie before I adopted him. My dad's wife called me, and I was looking for a dog actively at that point. I wanted a new dog immediately. So I think it was 6 months when I adopted him. So maybe it was the other way around. Timelines are funky, but
Yeah.
so she called me up and she's like, hey, I can't give him the life he wants. And I know you work with dogs and, I think you could do it. And I was like, absolutely. Like it was another thing where I just knew. And I had never met him. I was just like in my soul, I was like, yep. Like and
what kind of dog?
he is 100% mutt. We had the DNA done. He's Great Pyrenees, which I think that for me is the one that shows the most. He's got dew claws on the back legs, which is only like a handful, maybe like 6 breeds have dew claws on the back. And Great Pyrenees is one of those. But he's German Shepherd, Doberman Pinscher, Australian Cattle Dog. There's more.
He's quite large too, right? Like you can't really tell from online, but I think he's a big dog.
He's 100 pounds, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big dog.
He's a big guy. He's so sensitive. He's such a sensitive soul. Bo was very aloof and just like did it his way. It was always he's gonna do it his way. And Ernie is just very. He's soft and he's sensitive, which you think of big dogs and you're kind of like, oh, they're like intense, but he's not at all.
Do you ever feel threatened when you're out walking them? Because I know you go out on like hiking trails, right? Like to encounter wildlife out there, or do you feel safe with this pack?
So the biggest encounters are coyotes, and there's actually a book called Coyote America that I recommend everyone read. It's really good nonfiction, but it pertains to this because there are urban coyotes and then there's, not urban coyotes. And the urban coyotes, which we have here, they've learned to live with humans. Same with, we have raccoons and other animals that have adapted to living with humans. So if you encounter like a wild coyote out of the city, they're going to be more timid and they kind of run away. They don't want to interact with the humans. Here, they don't care. They will, if they see something, they'll try to get it. So I've been hunted. Well, the dogs have been hunted by coyotes a couple of times.
Wow.
Yeah, one time we were on, early morning, evening is when they're most active. So we were on a hike, it's like 6 or 7 a.m. and Bo started barking. And I was like, okay. And I knew his coyote bark. That's another thing with hounds is they have very specific barks. And I knew. I was like, that's his coyote bark. And so I looked around and I saw one. I was like, okay. And it was kind of in front of us. And I was like, all right, great. Let's go the other way. And it followed us. And so I started throwing rocks at it, making noise. And it was like, don't care. I'm going to keep following you. And then another one comes out from another spot. And they kind of start to triangulate. There were only 2 that time. So they come and finally, with Bo's barking and me throwing things at them, they backed off. But then there was another time where it was just in the neighborhood and I had 2 small dogs with me and Bo, and it was dark. And one just popped out in front of us, from a garage driveway thing. And then another one came behind us, all at the same time. And then there was one across the street. And so we were triangulated, they were coming. Bo is losing his mind. He's barking of a storm. And one of the dogs I had slipped out of her leash. So she was free. And I was panicked because she was free. They could she's small, so they could easily come and just swipe her away. So I picked her up, and she's a little round. She's a heavy dog for being so small. I picked her up and had Bo pulling, really trying to get to the coyotes, and then Jasmine, who's just like, I don't know what's going on. And so I'm carrying her, holding 2 dogs, and then they were not backing off. And so I just like started screaming and running. I was just like,
Wow.
like running towards them. And that got them to back off. And we were right around the corner from my house. So we were able to get back home.
Jeez.
So that's the biggest one. Rattlesnakes, of course, but the rattlesnakes don't want to be, rattlesnakes are not an aggressive animal. They only react if
Sure.
they feel threatened. So,
And we were just talking in the last show and then a couple of days ago about the bear encounter at Mount Wilson Trail. I don't know if you saw that online. A woman was on the trail. Someone else was, talking to her from up above, I think. And this bear was just walking towards her. And the woman's like, "What are you going to do?" She's like, "Nothing. It'll be okay." And the bear just, sort of walked by.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. I don't know that I would have been as calm as she was.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, she photographed it. The bear literally just walked right past her and looked up at her as it passed.
Yeah.
And she just kept filming.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been shaking, but I also, I love nature and I study nature and I like to learn about it. So I would,
What would you do?
I would do the same thing.
You would just be calm? Because you can't run.
If you run, it's going to trigger that primal instinct. So yeah, being calm is the best, especially with brown bears. California brown bears are much less aggressive than, say, a grizzly bear. So they, again, like other animals they don't want to hurt us. Like animals don't go out and start their day like, I'm going to mess someone up today. They
don't want trouble.
They don't want trouble. They want their space. And so if we can give that to them, and when we have encounters, by respecting them and being like, okay, like this is your territory, I'm just going to slowly back away or stand still. Of course there's always danger, but
can I tell you my stupid dog story?
I would love it.
It's not the dog that's stupid, it's me that's stupid. So I was watching some dogs for a friend of mine, 3 dogs, and every day I was supposed to take the dogs to a dog park, local dog park. And so the first day I did it, I allowed one of them to take a little toy, which was like a little plush, like a teddy, a doll or something, Well, when they got to the dog park, every dog wanted that little toy. And it turned into a massive free-for-all.
Yeah.
I mean, there were like 20, 30.
I knew that's where it was going as soon as you talked about the toy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the lesson I learned was you never take a toy to a dog park, right?
No food, no toys.
Oh, wow.
I don't personally love dog parks. It's a lot of uncontrolled energy. And so you've got so many different energies from so many different dogs. And so in situations like that, it can be really intense. And it doesn't even have to be a doll.
Much. Yeah, too much energy.
It's too much. Yeah.
I have a dog story for you guys. My father used to live in Huntington Beach. So there was the marine layer. It would be like almost foggy in the morning. And one morning he woke up, he opened the door, and I think he said it was like 5:30 in the morning. It was still very dark, like sun's barely coming up, and it was very foggy. He opens the door to get the paper, and our dog Buster runs out. And it's a Basset Hound mix with like little short legs, and he's only in his tidy whities. And my dad's like, oh. And he makes that decision in that moment to just run after the dog, right? And he's running after it, and the dog's not, it's stopping and it's going. And he sees this woman jogger, and he's embarrassed, so he crosses the street, and the dog's still not stopping. And he remembers, like, he taught our dog a trick, and he would go bang, bang, and the dog would roll over on its back. So my dad is running in the fog in his tidy whities, and he's going bang, 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 bang.
Oh my goodness.
But the dog finally rolled over, and he picked it up and he went back, and there was another jogger, and he took the dog in, and he gets showered, he puts on his clothes for work, and then there's a knock on the door, and it's the police.
Oh no.
And they're like, we had this report of this crazy Asian guy running in the street with his underwear. And he just started laughing, and he told them, of course they thought it was hilarious, but
that's incredible. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my father told me that story. But
I'll give a little pro tip for when dogs run away from you. if you're running after them, oftentimes they're like, oh, they're playing, they're chasing. So, and it's not always appropriate, but if you run the other way and you're like, hey, come on, like we're doing this, and make it like, oh, there's something new over here. A lot of times they'll come back, and then you stop and you can swoop them up. Doesn't always work, of course. Dogs are gonna do what they do, but if you're trying to catch a dog, go the other way.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, but Buster was probably the least trained of all of our dogs. But yeah, he was really he had to sit up on his butt. If you can imagine that, like a dog like this, but his legs were so short, so when he sat up to beg, he just sort of sat on his butt. Oh wow,
sounds really adorable.
Yeah. Well, we're going to transition into I know some of our favorite subjects here, which is to get into what your favorite things in the San Gabriel Valley. But before that, we had talked about a common interest in a restaurant, and you had mentioned Lunasia in Pasadena.
Yeah.
You like that place, huh?
I do, and it's not for the dim sum, which you would think, obviously the dim sum is amazing, but they have this dessert that is hot almond milk and puff pastry. And so going in the winter when it's rainy and getting some, steamy dim sum, and then having this hot almond milk with puff pastry. Yeah. It's so simple, and it takes like 20 minutes to make. So if you want it, you got to order it ahead. But it's so comforting.
Sounds like a perfect dessert.
It really is, because it's not too sweet. It's just steamed or baked almond milk.
It's dairy and it's bakery.
Was the last time you went there with us, with Priscilla
Probably.
and Ben?
Probably.
We went there with Priscilla and Ben. I think after a hike.
Yes. Yeah. That's been 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. They also have Peking duck there, I think.
Don't know.
Yeah.
I don't eat a ton of meat.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Maybe they do.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to get into some more of what you like in the San Gabriel Valley.
So, Alyssa, we call this our SGV3. What are 3 of your favorite places, things, events in the valley here?
I think one of the top ones would be Echo Mountain, in addition, Inspiration Point. Which is so brutal. It's very hard, but it is inspirational. Once you get it, not while you're going, you're like, I wanted to turn around so many times, but we didn't, kept going. But when you're up there, it's like, you feel like you earned it. It's something so beautiful. You can see forever.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful spot, and one that it was that hike that we went on before we went to Lunasia.
No. So we went on the hard way up. But then we went across.
That's right.
Yeah.
Over. Yeah.
Inspiration Point, I would say, is I think, depending on if you go up and down, there's 2 ways up and down, but it's at least, I think, 11 and a half miles round trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big hike.
Yeah.
But and a hard one.
Yeah.
You might
like
be
scrambling.
interested. We not only have a lot of guests indicated that as a favorite, but we had a show with a person who is an expert on Echo Mountain, a historian, local historian. Do you remember what episode that was?
So that was Michael Patrice, and he's the founder of the Mount Low Preservation Society. So all those signs that you see up there, like he's responsible for those.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much history up there. It's beautiful. I've done Echo Mountain that's how we accessed inspiration, was we went to Echo and then went up. Yeah. But I've done Echo Mountain way more than Inspiration Point.
So who convinced you to do that? Because that is a challenging hike, a very challenging hike.
I did.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because I hiked Echo a lot with the dogs. It's a great hike. You get up, I love to get up like right as it's starting to get light out, and hike up there and come back down. But I had heard of Inspiration Point, and I was like, all right, like, I've been hiking Echo for a while. Like, I could do this. And so I dragged my friend along with me, and we did it. And it was brutal. And Bo was with us, too.
Awesome.
How about a number 2?
Probably, this is going to maybe sound weird, but Huntington Hospital. I, have seen my nephew enter the world there, and I've also seen a friends leave there. Actually, a really powerful one was Bo's previous owner. We stayed very in contact, and we'd have brunch like once a month. And I helped her advocate through her cancer. And she passed away there, and I had spent a lot of time there, which death is always hard, but it's also so beautiful. There's just this beauty to the end of something, even if it means we're going to miss them. And I miss her dearly, and I miss Bo dearly, but I do find the beauty in the end of that physical life. And then the entering of a physical life, my nephew, he's incredible. And that's the first time I ever saw him, was in the room with his mom, and I held him. And so I think, and plus doctors and nurses, they're so wonderful. The science behind helping I just love it. Hospitals don't freak me out. I just want to watch. Like, I wish I could go into a surgery room and like do the surgery, or at least watch. So that's one of mine.
Yeah. Have you ever had experience at Huntington?
Only that my friend Aaron, who passed, he caught a staph infection there and died. Mm. Yeah, that's it. I've not.
So that was not a positive.
Not a positive one. Yeah, that was in 2020 actually.
Wow.
And he left behind 3 boys under 8.
Yeah, that's hard.
Oh, yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah, and he went in for like, I think, a routine. Maybe something very routine.
Oh, that's terrible. My daughter was born there, so it's special. And I had my surgery there. And yeah, I always have liked that hospital. I always think it's a nice.
I mean, I'm not saying this is representative of the hospital. That's just all I know or experience with.
Right.
Well,
yeah. It's a nice, I've been in other hospitals that are just like, you want to get out of there, but it's very, it's more welcoming than a lot of other hospitals I've seen or been in.
Right. Yeah, I felt that. How about number 3?
Another Huntington. I would say the Huntington Gardens.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, there's something new every time. You can walk the grounds hundreds of times and not see everything fully. The Rose Garden, of course, is magical. They have a Dolly Parton rose, and I'm a big fan of Dolly Parton, so I always try to visit that rose.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. It was one created that they named after her?
Yeah,
wow.
I don't know how they named them. I don't know. I don't think it's like a specific, strain of rose. I don't know. But if you go, they all have their names. And it's really cool just to walk around and read the names, and they smell so good. So I just really love to go to that part.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, thank you for coming on the show and sharing, so much of your story, especially your personal story with us and with the listeners. How can people get in touch with you? So
for dog training and pack walking, you can reach me at leashla.com. And then Instagram, it's like a nature dog account mostly. There's pictures of flowers and bugs. I love insects. So that's Alyssa J. Rose. Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming in. I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing, those things with our listeners. And I hope that the people that work with you and will work with you in the future, like they can also appreciate an insight into who you are and who they're entrusting their family members with, their dogs. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you again for spending this time with us. I hope you appreciated this show and this insight into, Alyssa here. Definitely check her out, leashla.com. And always drop us a message at info@sgvmasterkey.com. Check out our website for our full backlog of episodes at www.sgvmasterkey.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week in a new episode.
You've been listening to the SGV Master Key Podcast. Our passion is the small businesses and the people that make up the San Gabriel Valley, and it's our honor to have them on the show. We hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure to like, rate, and review. The show is produced by Russell Mano. Edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on the SGV Master Key Podcast.
Master, no, kind of master.